Imagine you're sitting at a table, surrounded by people, laughter, chatter about the latest Netflix show, the weather, a scandal that will be forgotten tomorrow. You're there, but you're not. You listen, you nod, you play along, but inside, a void, a quiet detachment, a growing sense that the world moves on a different frequency, one you can't tune into. The more you think, the more distant you feel. Not because you want to be, but because depth has a cost. Schopenhauer had a brutal answer. Exceptional minds are destined to be alone, not by choice, but by nature. Because when you see the world too clearly, it stops making sense. Because the moment you outgrow the illusion, you become an outsider. And that's the price of intelligence. You don't fit in, not because there's something wrong with you, but because most people are content splashing in the shallows while your mind is lost at sea. So, is solitude the only path left for the intelligent? Is it a lifelong burden to carry in silence? Or is it something rare, something extraordinary, reserved for those who were never meant to live an ordinary life? Solitude isn't a choice, it's a consequence. You don't wake up one day and decide to be different. It happens slowly, subtly. One moment, you're a child, full of questions. Why the sky is blue, why people lie, why time feels different when you're happy or sad. But as you grow, the questions get bigger, the answers more unsatisfying. And one day you realize most people don't even ask. They exist, they follow, they repeat, they talk without saying anything. Their happiness seems real but fragile, built on routines and distractions. And you see through it. You hear the emptiness in conversations. You feel the weight of words unspoken. You try to engage, to share what fascinates you, but the responses are shallow, dismissive. Why do you think so much? Can't you just enjoy the moment? And that's when it happens, the quiet withdrawal. Not bitterness, not arrogance, just exhaustion. Schopenhauer saw this coming. He believed that intelligence creates a natural barrier, not because it isolates you, but because it makes it harder to find real connection. A high degree of intellect tends to make a man unsocial. The more a man has in himself, the less he needs from others. Ordinary people think merely how they shall spend their time. A man of intellect tries to use it. To the world, intelligence is useful until it becomes inconvenient, until it stops playing along. The moment you start asking why, you become an outsider. So you retreat, not physically but mentally. You learn to keep your thoughts to yourself. You master the art of silence. And at first it hurts, but then something shifts. You start to cherish the space, the clarity, the absence of noise. You find comfort in books, ideas, art, things that don't demand you shrink yourself to fit in. But here's the paradox. Solitude protects you, yet it also consumes you. The further you drift, the harder it becomes to return. And that's where the real danger lies. Because if you're not careful, solitude stops being a refuge and becomes a prison. And why does this happen? Because society was never built for deep thinkers. It was built for comfort, for repetition, for illusions. People are like children who prefer to keep the candle burning, though they only need it while they are asleep. As soon as they awake, they extinguish the light. And once you wake up, once you see through the illusion, you can never unsee it. Which brings us to the real question. If society is nothing but a grand illusion, why do most people seem perfectly content living in it? Schopenhauer didn't just believe intelligence led to solitude. He believed society itself was designed to keep it that way. Most people don't seek truth. They seek comfort. They don't want to understand reality. They want reality to be easy, predictable, effortless. And when someone comes along who sees through the illusion, they don't listen. They reject. They resent. To be alone is the fate of all great minds, a fate sometimes deplored, but still always chosen as the lesser of two evils. Society thrives on surface-level existence. It's a theater where people play roles, obey social scripts, say what they're supposed to say, act how they're expected to act. The moment you question the script, you become a threat. It's not that people don't understand you, it's that they don't want to. Because if they acknowledge your way of thinking, they might have to rethink their own. And most people would rather stay asleep than face the weight of reality. That's why deep conversations are rare. That's why when you talk about philosophy, psychology, meaning, people tune out. They don't reject intelligence. They reject discomfort. They reject effort. And in doing so, they reject you. Schopenhauer saw this illusion everywhere. We forfeit 3/4 of ourselves in order to be like other people. That's the cost of fitting in. To belong, you must give up parts of yourself, your curiosity, your intensity, your need for meaning. The more intelligent you are, the harder this becomes. You feel it in small ways. You hold back your thoughts to avoid making others uncomfortable. You simplify your ideas so people don't tune out. You pretend to care about things that don't matter just to keep a conversation going. And eventually, it exhausts you. So you stop trying, you choose silence, you withdraw, not because you want to, but because forcing connection feels worse than solitude. At least in solitude, you don't have to pretend. But here's the trap. The more you retreat, the harder it becomes to return. And before you know it, solitude isn't a choice anymore. It's a cage. So where's the way out? If society rejects those who see too much, how do you live in it without losing yourself? At first, solitude feels like freedom. No more forced conversations. No more pretending to care about empty small talk. No more feeling like an outsider in a world that doesn't want to think. You tell yourself this is better. You don't need them. You have your books, your thoughts, your own world. But then something shifts. Days turn into weeks, weeks into months. You realize the silence isn't just peaceful, it's heavy. The thoughts that once felt like a refuge start echoing back at you. There's no one to challenge you, no one to sharpen your ideas against. You're alone, not just in mind, but in existence. Schopenhauer saw this danger clearly. If a man does not enjoy solitude, he will not love freedom, for it is only when he is alone that he is really free. But beware. Freedom without direction is emptiness. Solitude protects you from the superficial, but it also isolates you from what makes life meaningful. No matter how intelligent you are, no matter how much you see through the illusions, you are still human. You still crave connection. The problem isn't just that society rejects deep thinkers, it's that deep thinkers in response reject society. And that's where the real danger lies. Nietzsche described this in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, the philosopher who isolates himself on a mountain, searching for wisdom, only to descend and realize the world no longer understands him. The longer you stay away, the harder it becomes to return. Isolation doesn't just keep others out, it locks you in. And before you know it, you're not choosing solitude anymore. It's choosing you. So what's the solution? If you can't fit into the world, but you can't survive alone, what's left? How do you exist in a society that feels so alien without losing yourself in the process? Schopenhauer had an answer. It wasn't about changing the world. It was about changing how you see it. Schopenhauer didn't believe in fighting society. He knew it was pointless. The world wasn't going to change just because you saw through it. Instead, he offered a different approach. Detachment, not isolation, not submission, something in between. The wise have always said the same things, and fools who are the majority have always done just the opposite. So let them. Let them chase status, validation, entertainment. Let them avoid the deep questions because they're too uncomfortable. You don't need to change them. You just need to stop expecting them to understand you. And once you do that, something shifts. Schopenhauer believed in living as an observer rather than a participant. Instead of feeling alienated, he suggested seeing society like a scientist watching an experiment. Engage when necessary, but never attach. Observe without expectation. Be present without losing yourself. That's the key. Not isolation, but strategic detachment. The art of not caring is a skill, not a lack of feeling, but a mastery of it. This is where most intelligent people get trapped. They expect depth where there is only surface. They demand understanding from those who can't provide it, and when they don't get it, they retreat. But the true skill isn't cutting the world off. It's knowing how to interact with it without letting it consume you. Choose your moments, choose your people. Not everyone will understand you, but some will. You don't need to be surrounded by many, just by the right ones. And when you can't find them, remember this: solitude is a tool, not a sentence. Use it when you need it. Don't let it use you. But most importantly, accept this truth: you will always be somewhat alone. Intelligence will always separate you from the majority. The depth of your thoughts will always create a gap between you and the world. But that gap, that space between you and them, that's where freedom lives. Schopenhauer was right. Intelligence isolates. The deeper you think, the further you drift. Society wasn't designed for those who question, but for those who comply. And when you start seeing through the illusion, you don't just feel different, you feel alone. At first, that solitude stings. It feels like exile. But what if it's proof? Proof that you were never meant to fit in, but to stand apart. Because the world doesn't change by those who blend in. It shifts because of those who dare to see differently. Your mind isn't a burden, it's a weapon. Solitude isn't a sentence, it's a sanctuary. The trick isn't to fight society or abandon it, but to master it. To know when to play the game and when to walk away. To carve a space where you don't shrink, where you expand. And if this resonates, you already know. So don't just think, act. Subscribe for more. Share this with the one person who understands. And tell me in the comments, is solitude your prison or your power?